I have a question for you. What comes to mind when you hear the word Nigeria? For some of us, it's music, Nollywood films, delicious food. For others, it's poverty, corruption, and never-ending problems. And for many, it's a land of immense beauty and promise. So which is it? The good, the bad, or perhaps both? Well, the truth is somewhere in between, complicated by a history that most don't know well enough. Welcome back to Factsphere 86, your daily window into the mysteries of history, science, and power. Today, we dive into a story rarely told in full: how European influence shaped Nigeria's path, from the 1914 amalgamation through colonial extraction to the Biafran War, and how its shadows linger today. The year is 1914. Imagine yourself standing at the confluence of the Benue and Niger rivers in what would become known as Nigeria. What do you see? Rivers flowing into one another, people going about their lives, maybe a bustling market. Now pull out an archival map of Africa around that time. Notice anything familiar? Now look at a colonial map. See the difference? On January 1st, 1914, Lord Frederick Lugard, the British High Commissioner for Nigeria, proclaimed the union of the northern and southern Nigeria colonies into one entity. He did so from his headquarters at the confluence of the Niger and Benue rivers. Now, this wasn't just a friendly union of equals. It was a marriage of convenience. And sometimes those marriages can be a little messy. The bride and groom had separate histories, cultures, and even religions. One was mostly Christian, the other mostly Muslim. One had a system of indirect rule through local chiefs, while the other was more accustomed to centralized authority. And they weren't too keen on the idea of spending the rest of their lives together. You see, the British Colonial Office saw this coming. In fact, they even wrote about it. In a letter to Lugard in 1912, the Colonial Office pointed out that the two parts of Nigeria are so essentially different in race, in religion, in customs, in the configuration of their territory, and in the character of their administration that no common policy could be long maintained between them. Yet the Union went ahead anyway. Why? Well, because for the British, it made administrative sense. They could tax the people more easily, build railroads, and extract the wealth of both regions more efficiently. Thus, the foundation of modern Nigeria was laid on fragile ground. Let's talk about the economy. We're talking about an economy designed not for Nigerians, but for London. While Nigeria was rich in resources, that wealth wasn't used to develop the country. Instead, cash crops and minerals like cocoa, groundnuts, tin, and later oil flowed outwards to fuel Britain's industrial and military needs. The famous groundnut pyramids of northern Nigeria, a testament to the wealth of the region, also symbolized the export of a resource that didn't benefit the local population. Meanwhile, roads and rail lines connected Nigeria to the sea, not to each other. This stunted internal trade and left the vast majority of Nigerians disconnected from the opportunities created by colonialism. Then there's education. You see, the colonial government only provided enough schools and universities to produce the number of people they needed to keep their system running. Those Nigerians who did get educated often found themselves working in low-level positions, frustrated and angry at the limits placed on their potential. Governance, too, was geared towards serving the empire rather than empowering the people. Leaders were appointed, not elected, and those who did rise through the ranks often faced opposition from the colonial authorities. Finally, there was the issue of representation. Nigerians were expected to be loyal subjects of the British Empire, but they had no voice in British affairs. Any say they did have was limited to the small degree that they could participate in local councils. But overall, colonial rule was anything but fair or equitable. It was extractive, exploitative, and designed to serve the interests of the imperial power. Despite this, Lugard believed that he was doing the right thing. In fact, he actually wrote about it. According to him, his vision for Nigeria was one of peace, order, and good government, economic development, and social progress. Whether or not he achieved any of those things is a matter of debate. In reality, colonialism brought about a lasting legacy of poverty, inequality, and instability to Nigeria, setting the stage for challenges that persist to this day. In 1960, Nigeria got its independence. The flag was raised and the crowd roared with joy. But here's the catch. Beneath the surface, the colonial blueprint remained intact. The new nation was still dependent on exporting raw materials and importing manufactured goods. The economy, heavily reliant on agriculture and cash crops, lacked the necessary diversification to ensure stability. Government institutions, formed in the mold of the colonial administration, were ill-equipped to handle the complex challenges of a post-colonial state. There were also significant regional disparities, which means that some areas of the country were much wealthier than others. This led to tensions and rivalries that would come to a head in the years to come. And then there was the discovery of oil in the Niger Delta in the early 1950s. On one hand, this should have been a blessing. After all, oil is the world's most valuable natural resource. But here's the thing. Nigeria was not ready for black gold. It became the OPEC member with the largest population and the least amount of oil per capita. So you can imagine the scramble that ensued. Foreign oil giants like Shell, BP, and ExxonMobil swooped in, eager to tap into this new resource. They built massive oil platforms and pumping stations. Pipelines crisscrossed the landscape, carrying the lifeblood of nations across the delta. But something crucial was missing: accountability. Oil transformed the Nigerian landscape, but not necessarily for the better. While oil revenues brought in billions, much of the wealth didn't stay in Nigeria. Foreign companies siphoned off the profits, leaving behind a trail of environmental devastation. Oil spills tainted the rivers and farmlands, displacing communities and poisoning their way of life. Meanwhile, local people struggled with poverty amidst the very resource that was supposed to enrich them. This brings us to a pivotal moment in Nigeria's history. On May 30th, 1967, the Republic of Biafra declared its independence from Nigeria. Now, you might be wondering why. Well, the reasons are complex, involving historical, cultural, ethnic, and of course, economic factors. But let's simplify it for a moment. The people of Biafra wanted self-determination. They wanted control over their own future. They wanted to chart their own course away from what they saw as a corrupt and mismanaging central government. The war that followed was brutal and tragic. It lasted from 1967 to 1970. It claimed the lives of millions of people, many of whom were innocent civilians. Children suffered severe malnutrition, leading to what the world came to call Biafran. Starvation became a terrible tool of war. But it wasn't just hunger that was weaponized. Death itself took center stage as soldiers and militias from both sides engaged in horrific acts, burning villages, killing civilians, and perpetuating a cycle of violence that seemed endless. During the darkest days of the Biafran War, the world stood by and watched. Some offered aid, others looked the other way. Countries aligned with the warring factions, backing them with weapons, funding, and diplomatic support. The United States and Britain supported Nigeria, while France and Israel backed Biafra. This wasn't just a conflict that tore apart a nation. It was a geopolitical chess match played on the bodies of civilians caught in the crossfire. The declaration of Biafra shocked the world. Newspapers carried headlines that read, "Africa's first new war, world watches as Biafra rebels," and "Starving children mark 1 year of war." These stories were more than just news. They were glimpses into a tragedy unfolding before the world's eyes. So what role did oil play in all this? Well, it's a complicated story. Oil companies advanced royalties and payments to the Nigerian government during the war, which some believe was done to influence the conflict in favor of the federal government. And while it's difficult to say definitively how much oil influenced the war, it's hard to ignore the timing and the stakes involved. As the war raged on, the world began to take notice. International organizations sounded alarms about the dire humanitarian situation in Biafra. Doctors and aid workers rushed to the front lines, trying to make a difference amidst the chaos. But the scale of the tragedy was overwhelming. By the time the war ended in 1970, an estimated 1 million people had lost their lives, primarily due to starvation and disease. The Biafran War wasn't just a conflict over land and resources. It was a desperate bid for survival. It was a fight against neglect and marginalization. It was a cry for help that the world couldn't ignore. Although the war officially ended in 1970, its impact continues to resonate. The region still faces issues related to poverty, access to healthcare, and ongoing conflicts. The wounds of war run deep, and the scars of Biafra are a constant reminder of the human cost of conflict. The story of Biafra raises profound questions about international responsibility, the role of global powers in internal conflicts, and the lasting impact of war on a nation's psyche. It's a somber chapter in Nigeria's history, one that demands remembrance and reflection. Fast forward to today, and the story continues. The Niger Delta remains polluted with oil spills tainting the water and soil. The dream of a diversified economy seems distant and corruption persists, turning politics into a scramble for oil rents. Insecurity plagues many regions, and the echoes of past grievances continue to resonate. Despite these challenges, Nigeria's story isn't over. The country has immense potential, and its people have shown remarkable resilience. Holding corporations to their cleanup pledges, diversifying the economy, strengthening governance, and confronting the unfinished business of history are crucial steps towards a brighter future. Nigeria's journey is a testament to the indomitable spirit of its people. Its challenges are a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked exploitation. As Nigeria navigates its path forward, the world watches, hoping that this African giant will one day rise to its full potential. Thank you for joining us on this episode of FactSphere 86. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe for more. Until next time, stay curious.